Hey everyone, my name is Joseph Haig. I am a freelance artist and filmmaker based in Austin, Texas. And a couple of weeks ago, I had a colleague ask me if I had a workflow to convert a DAZ character into a fully functioning metahuman with the body and textures transferred. And I do, so I wanted to make a two-part tutorial extensively covering my process. In part 1, we will be covering how to get your DAZ character prepped and exported for the wrapping process with an appropriate pose and remap textures. We will then head into Maya and use a very powerful plugin called Metapipe. By the end of part 1, we will have our DAZ character fully converted to a metahuman. In part 2, we will be importing our head and body skeletal meshes into Unreal Engine, setting up the control rigs and DNA files, and then taking our DAZ textures and creating appropriate normal and cavity maps for the metahuman materials. By the end of part 2, you will have a fully functioning custom metahuman with the DAZ body textures converted and plugged into your metahuman materials, and working metahuman body and face control rigs. The software required to follow this tutorial are DAZ Studio, Quixel Bridge, Unreal Engine 5.4, Metahumans for Unreal Engine 5.4, Maya 2022 or 2023, Metapipe 1.3, Adobe Substance 3D, Adobe Photoshop, Wrap, and Zbrush. Since I will be working with Metapipe version 1.3, and there are version-specific settings within both Metapipe and Maya, this will currently only work with Maya 2022 or 2023. So before we jump into DAZ, there's a few things we need to get set up first. If you don't have Quixel Bridge installed, go ahead and install it now. Sign in with your Epic Games account, and head over to Metahuman Creator. Go ahead and create a metahuman that closely approximates your DAZ character. In my case, my DAZ character is a tall female with long red hair and blue eyes, so I will customize my metahuman accordingly, with red hair, blue eyes, and the female tall normal weight body type. When you're finished with your metahuman, head back to Bridge and make sure the Maya plugin is installed. You can check this by going to Edit and Manage Plugins. Then, in your metahuman's download settings, under the Models tab, make sure metahuman is set to UAsset plus source asset. Go ahead and download your metahuman. Once your metahuman is downloaded, head to your Megascans library folder. Generally, this installs by default to your Documents directory. Once in the library folder, navigate to this path: Downloaded, DHI, your assets tag, 8K, asset source, metahumans, your assets name, and source assets. Once you're in the directory, you should see your metahuman's DNA file. Go ahead and click once on the address bar, copy the path, and paste it on a notepad or sticky note. Then change all the backslashes to forward slashes. This is an important step, as the Python script will not read it correctly with the backslashes. Add one more forward slash after source asset, and put the name of your DNA file at the end exactly as it appears in the directory. Now, let's head over to the Epic Games DNA Calibration GitHub page. I'll put a link in the description that will take you to version 1.1.0, which is what we'll be using with Metapipe 1.3. Go ahead and download it. Next, on the root of your C drive, create a folder and name it DNA_calibration. Open the DNA calibration zip file you just downloaded, select all of its contents, and move it into the DNA calibration folder you just created. Now for this next step, I'm not going to get into the installation process for Metapipe, but I will leave a link in the description for the Metapipe 1.3 installation tutorial on the Arts and Spells YouTube channel, which is basically the official Metapipe channel. Once you do have Metapipe 1.3 installed, you should have a folder on the root of your C drive called Arts and Spells. Go ahead and open it. Then open the Scripts folder and locate a Python script named DAT. Right-click it and edit with any text editor. You should see 5 lines: root directory, main path, Maya version, DNA path, and body type. They do go over this in the Metapipe tutorial, but we'll quickly cover it anyways since it's part of our workflow. So make sure the Maya version matches the one installed on your system. And for the DNA path, go ahead and copy the DNA path we pasted on a sticky note earlier and replace what's in the quotations with our updated one. Just make sure the quotations don't get deleted. Then, under the body type, make sure it matches your metahuman's body type. For me, I'll go ahead and change this to female, tall, normal weight. After that, click Save, and we are done with the initial MetaPipe setup. Go ahead and create a folder wherever you prefer and name it DAZ to Metahuman. Open it and create 4 subfolders and name them as follows: DAZ Mesh and Textures, Intermediate Meshes, MetaPipe Meshes, and Wrap Textures. When you are done, we are ready for DAZ Studio. In DAZ, go ahead and select a base. I'll be using the Genesis 8.1 Basic Female. Now, let's apply a character to that base. I'll be using a character called Kelly by ADSI. Once I've applied the character, I need to make sure I apply all her base maps. I also want my character to have tattoos, so I'll go ahead and apply those as well. I don't want my texture map to have eyebrows, since we will be applying those grooms later on in Unreal Engine, so I'll go ahead and select the No Brow material. Now that I have the materials applied to my DAZ character, I need to export the character as an OBJ with texture maps, but there are a few issues we need to address first. So for the upcoming wrapping process, we need a single texture map that we can project from the DAZ character onto the wrapped metahuman. But DAZ characters are split into several polygroups with several texture maps across those polygroups, and on top of that, some single texture maps cover multiple polygroups. So how do we get around this? Well, DAZ has a really nice feature built right in called Texture Atlas. You can find this by right-clicking on the Surface tab and clicking on, that's right, Texture Atlas. When the pop-up window appears, you will be presented with a list of separate texture maps that the Texture Atlas function will combine together into one unified texture map. Go ahead and deselect everything except the arms, the legs, the face, and the torso. If you have multiple arms, legs, and face maps like I do here, that's because there is an additive element or a subtractive element to your character's textures. In my case, it's the tats and the no eyebrows. So I will make sure to only select the maps I need with the T at the end indicating tattoo, and the Kelly No Brow face map. Now just click Auto Arrange to see a preview of your texture map. But there are still some problems. Because I'm using additive and subtractive maps, we can see that the No Brows face map doesn't include the ears, the lips, or the eye sockets. Those textures were being provided by the other Kelly face map that we unchecked. We also see that the fingernails and toenails aren't included either. Again, because those were being covered by textures we unchecked for the non-tattooed arms and legs. So how do we fix this? Well, go ahead and close out of Texture Atlas, and with your Surfaces tab selected, navigate to the top Genesis 8.1 drop-down arrow and click it. Then go down to the Surfaces drop-down arrow, click that, and you will see a list of all the body groups. First, I will select the ears. A texture menu appears on the right, and you should see a base color texture map. When clicked, you will be presented with a list of maps you can apply to the ears. I will select Kelly Face No Brow. I will do the same thing for the bump map. We don't have to worry about the normal map because it's shared by all the other diffuse maps. I will repeat this process for the eye sockets and the lips. And now, for the toenails, I will assign the Kelly In Legs T diffuse, and for the fingernails, the Kelly In Arms T diffuse. We don't have to worry about the bump on these. After this, I can head back over to the Texture Atlas. You will now notice we have a few less materials listed, and that's what we want. So again, I'll deselect everything but the arms, legs, face, and torso. And now, when I click Auto Arrange, everything is mapped correctly. So we are now ready to export the character textures. I will click Accept, and a Create UV Set Images pop-up appears. I'll go ahead and name this set DAZ Textures, and the target folder will be the DAZ Mesh and Textures folder we created earlier. I'm only going to export the diffuse, the bump, and the normal, and since these are all originally 4K maps, to retain good resolution for texture projection later, I'm going to set the resolution under the image settings to something high, like 16,384 by 16,384. Now, depending on your system, this could take a while. Once that's finished, we are ready to export our character as an OBJ, but not before I endow upon you all a special gift to make your lives a little easier. In the description, there is a link to a DUF pose file. Go ahead and download that and apply it to your DAZ character. This is a one-to-one pose to metahumans, and it basically ensures that the wrapping process and MetaPipe rigging process go as smoothly as possible. After you've applied the pose, go ahead and export your character as an OBJ. The default settings are fine. Name it DAZ Mesh and save it to your DAZ Mesh and Textures folder. Go ahead and save the project, and we are done in DAZ. Something to keep in mind, once you texture atlas a DAZ character, its UVs have been remapped for the texture atlas, so your exported texture atlas is exclusive to that specific mesh. That's why we always want to export our OBJ immediately after the texture atlas process. If for some reason your computer crashes or the program closes and you didn't save, you will have to go through the whole process again, so always save. Let's go ahead and get into Maya. Once in Maya, open up Quixel Bridge, select your Metahuman, and press Export. Now anyone who has exported a Metahuman from Bridge to Maya knows this can take a little while, so I'll be back when it's done. Okay, so with your Metahuman hopefully successfully imported into Maya, let's navigate to our Maya script editor. And under the Python tab, we are going to paste this script, which is included with the Metapipe plugin. Go ahead and press Run, and a pop-up window should come up prompting us to save a file. This basically turns your current scene into the body DRV file, which is very important for stitching everything back together at the end of this process. Go ahead and type in body with a capital B underscore DRV with a capital D. The caps are important. Go ahead and hit save, and after a few seconds, you should see your scene change, and that's exactly what we want. Now navigate to the body rig and expand it. Then expand body group, body geometry group, and body LOD0 group. You should see 3 meshes, one of which is hidden. Go ahead and select the hidden mesh and press H, and that's our money. This is our combined Metahuman mesh that we will be wrapping to the DAZ body. Go ahead and export it, naming it Body Combined, and save it to your intermediate mesh folder. Next, select the body only mesh and export it to the same folder as body only. You can go ahead and save and close out of Maya as we are now ready for the wrapping process. You can use R3DS or Faceform Wrap. They will do the exact same thing in our situation. So I already have this set up in Wrap, but let's walk through the process. Create 2 load geometry nodes. On the left node, import your Body Combined OBJ from the Intermediate Meshes folder. On the right node, import your DAZ Mesh OBJ from the DAZ Mesh and Textures folder. Underneath your right load geometry node, create a Select Polygons node, and underneath that, create a Subset node. Connect the right load geometry node to the Select Polygons node, then click on your Select Polygons node and go to the visual editor. You should see your DAZ character broken up into different colored material groups. In the toolbar at the top, click the plus material button and add these materials: body, face, lips, head, ears, legs, arms, fingernails, and toenails. Then connect the pink output of the Select Polygons node to the pink input of the Subsets node. Go back up to your right Load Geometry node and pull another output into the blue input of the Subset node. Under your Subset node, create a Select Point Pairs node. Connect the output of the left Load Geometry node into the left input of the Select Point Pairs node, and the output from the Subset node into the right input of the Select Point Pairs node. In the visual editor, go ahead and start placing your points. The important ones to think about are the face, the fingers, and the toes. Get a pretty well-rounded coverage of points, and when you're happy with it, go ahead and create a wrapping node. Pull another output from the left Load Geometry node and connect it to the far left input of the wrapping node. Then pull another output from your Subset node and connect it to the second input of your wrapping node. And last, connect the output of your Select Point Pairs node to the yellow input of the wrapping node. And you're ready to wrap. Press the Compute button and let it do its thing. When it's done, create a Save Geometry node. Connect your Wrap node to it and export your Wrapped Metahuman as Wrapped OBJ to your Intermediate Mesh folder. Go ahead and save the Wrap project as DAZ to Metahuman, as we will be using this project again for texture projection in Part 2. Now let's head back over to Maya and open a new scene. Let's click on the Metapipe icon to open up the plugin. Once the plugin window appears, press the green Update button under the Metahuman DNA path. This is an important step, so always press Update before opening the DNA viewer. Now let's open up the DNA viewer, and the Epic Games DNA viewer window will appear. Copy the DNA path from the Metapipe window and paste it in the path of the DNA viewer, then press Load DNA on the DNA viewer. You will see a list of meshes appear. Click Select All Meshes, then under Build Options, make sure to check Joints, Blend Shapes, and Skin Cluster. For the GUI path, press the three dots and navigate to the DNA_calibration folder on your C drive. Then go into the Data folder. Select the GUI Maya file and press Open. Do the same for the analog GUI and the additional assemble scripts. Then click Process. This may take a few minutes. Once your DNA is loaded, in the outliner, expand the head group, the geometry group, and the head LOD0 group. Select head LOD0 mesh and export it as an OBJ to the intermediate meshes folder as head only. Then export the iLeft LOD0 mesh to the same directory as iLeft and repeat this process for the iRight LOD0 mesh. Something to note, the iMeshes must be exported separately to preserve the correct vertex order. Once you're finished, go ahead and open a new Maya scene. You don't have to save this scene as we were just grabbing the head and the iMeshes. In our new scene, import your body only, head only, and wrapped meshes from your intermediate meshes folder. Once imported, duplicate your wrapped mesh and make sure it's selected. Navigate to the UV editor and in the UV toolkit, make sure face selection is selected. Then select all the body UVs. In the viewport, scroll your middle mouse wheel forward and backward to make sure your viewport is active again, and press Delete. You should be left with only a head mesh from the duplicated wrapped mesh. Now, select the original wrapped mesh, and repeat the process, only this time in the UV editor, select all the head UVs. Confirm you're back in the viewport mode, and press Delete. We now have our body. Now let's transfer attributes from our wrapped body mesh to our body only mesh. We can do this by selecting the wrapped body first, shift selecting the body only second, and then navigating to Mesh, Transfer Attributes, Options. This will bring up the Transfer Attributes Options window. Make sure our options are as follows: Vertex Position on, Vertex Normals on, UV Sets off, Color Sets off, Sample Space UV, Mirroring off, and Search Method to closest point. Click Apply. Now repeat this process for the wrapped head mesh. When you're finished, export your head-only mesh as final head to your Metapipe meshes folder, as well as your body-only mesh as final body. And we're done with this step. You might want to save this scene to be able to come back to it if something goes wrong and you need to re-export the final meshes again. Just save it as DAS to Meta Transfer Attributes or whatever you want. Now let's head to Zbrush. We are going to import 4 meshes. The first mesh is the head-only mesh from the intermediate meshes folder. Along with the iLeft and the iRight. And the final head from the Metapipe meshes folder. Go ahead and insert or append these all into the same scene. Get a good visual reference of where and how the eyes are sitting in the head-only mesh. Then, using the Move tool, go ahead and move and adjust the eye position for the final head mesh. I find what helps me out a lot is to use transparency mode, and when moving an eye, pressing Shift to snap it to a nearest value. This way you can remember these values for the other eye. Once you've got your eyes set and they look good, go ahead and export the left eye as iLeft final to your Metapipe meshes folder and repeat the process for your right eye. And we are done in Zbrush. Now if you've made it with me this far, we are getting close to the home stretch. Our next step is the big Metapipe step, and it's going to do all the heavy lifting and the voodoo that it does. So in a new Maya scene, open up your Metapipe plugin. Be sure to click the green update button again, then click Open DNA Viewer. The process is identical to the last time we did it. Copy the DNA path from the Metapipe window and paste it in the path of the DNA viewer. Then press Load DNA on the DNA viewer. We get that list of meshes. Click Select All Meshes, then under Build Options, make sure to check Joints, Blend Shapes, and Skin Clusters. For the GUI path, once again navigate to the DNA_calibration folder on your C drive, then go into the Data folder, select the GUI file, and press Open. Do the same for the analog GUI and the additional assemble scripts. Then click Process. Now the only difference from the last time we did this is now when the DNA scene loads, we want to press the Load DNA button in the Metapipe plugin. In a few seconds, Maya will give you a warning saying it's already loaded. This is extremely important because if you don't press Load DNA in the Metapipe plugin, Metapipe won't save the DNA properly after the joint transform step. So always press the Metapipe Load DNA after the viewer has finished processing. Alright, we are almost there. So in your Metapipe plugin, click Batch Import. When the import window opens, navigate to your Metapipe Meshes folder and select the Final Body, Final Head, Eye Left Final, and Eye Right Final. Doesn't have to be in any order, just select those 4 meshes and click Import. Then, in the outliner, select all 4 meshes you just imported and click Joint Transforms in the Metapipe plugin. After a few seconds, you should see your joints now conformed to your custom head and the body disappear, and that's okay, it's supposed to happen. You also won't be able to use the face rig just yet. That will be available after you save the custom DNA, but you're now ready to press Save DNA. Once you do, it will go through the process of creating the updated DNA for your custom character. This may take a while. When it's finished, it will update the Maya scene with the newly created updated DNA scene. You can now use the control rig and test out your character's facial movements. I also like to adjust the eye shells a bit by going to Surfaces on the toolbar and using the Geometry Sculpt tool to pull the eye shell out in places the eyes poke through. Make sure to check every position of the eyes, and also open the eyelids wide and check, as they poke out there as well. Trust me, it's worth it. When you've made all the tweaks you want, go ahead and click Save DNA in the Metapipe plugin, and it will update your changes to the DNA. And we are finally nearing the end of the Metapipe process. So, with your final DNA open, go ahead and click Prepare to Export. You will see a slight change in the outliner as it is prepping the scene for the body rig. In the Metapipe plugin, select Batch Import and select your final body mesh in your Metapipe Meshes folder and click Import. With the body selected, click Build Body in the Metapipe plugin. After a little while, you will have a complete Metahuman rig. Go ahead and check to make sure your body rig is working correctly, and if it is, let's move on to getting rid of the LODs we don't need. In the outliner, navigate to your Head group, Geometry group, and select all the LODs after 0 and delete them. In the Body Geometry group, let's do the same thing and delete all LODs after 0. Metapipe 1.3 does have LOD compatibility, but we won't be covering that in this video. So if you're interested in the LOD setup, you can head over to the Arts and Spells YouTube channel and check out the LOD workflows. And I know it's only gotten better with the recent Metapipe updates. Okay, in the Body LOD 0 group, go ahead and delete the combined mesh and flip-flops. We don't need those. And the last step before export is assigning the material IDs. So back in the outliner, under Head LOD 0 group, select the Head LOD 0 mesh, and in the Metapipe plugin, click the Material Assign button. Repeat this process on all the meshes in the head group. You don't have to worry about the body group if you assign materials to all the head group meshes. And we are now ready to export. So go ahead and click the Export button in the Metapipe plugin. And that's it. It takes a little while, but when it's finished, you can go ahead and save your project and close out Maya. Make your way back to that DNA calibration folder on your C drive and go to the Output folder. You should see a Head and Body FBX file. Rename these to whatever you want to, and we are now ready to import those to Unreal Engine. So that about wraps it up for part 1. Like I said earlier, in part 2, we will be covering the import process, DNA, textures, control rigs, and all that fun stuff. I hope this video was helpful and informative. If so, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see everyone in part 2.